ability to deliver for the American people. Let me just start with the numbers. At present, the State Department has more than 60 nominees with the Senate. 38 have completed all the other steps and are on the Senate floor, awaiting confirmation. Of those 38, 35 are career Foreign Service officers. Now, that number is going to keep going up as more sitting ambassadors complete their tours, more nominees come forward. By the end of the summer, we expect Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon will all be without confirmed U.S. ambassadors. 8 nominees are awaiting confirmation for posts in African countries. And it's not just the Middle East and Africa where we've got this problem. Ambassadorships are open in Asia, in Europe, in Latin America, as nominees await confirmation. So are key issue-focused positions, like, for example, our counterterrorism coordinator. During the current Congress, only 5 nominees have been confirmed. In previous administrations, the overwhelming majority of career nominees received swift support to advance through the Senate by unanimous consent. Today, for reasons that have nothing to do with the nominees' qualifications or abilities, they are being forced to proceed through individual floor votes. Over a third of those nominees have been waiting approximately a year or more, some longer than 18 months. These nonpartisan public servants have served for decades across Republican and Democratic administrations. They represent our most skilled, our most seasoned diplomats. Their talents are the products of generations of investment by American taxpayers. To defend U.S. national security, to sustain and strengthen our alliances and partnerships around the world, to ensure that our foreign policy is advancing the interests of the American people, we need our best possible team on the field. By failing to confirm these nominees, a handful of senators are keeping our best players on the sidelines. Now, I worked in the Senate for years. So, of course, did President Biden. I respect and value its critical oversight role. It's crucial in ensuring that we have highly qualified individuals representing the United States around the world. But that's not what is happening here. No one is questioning the qualifications of these career diplomats. They're being blocked for leverage on other unrelated issues. It's irresponsible, and it's doing harm to our national security. Confirming these nominees matters. As every member of Congress knows, our ambassadors are the face of the United States in the countries where they serve, are leading advocates for and with foreign governments and citizens. We have extraordinarily dedicated and qualified career officers who are serving as chargés in these countries where the positions are left open, and I'm immensely grateful for their service. But all of them would tell you the same thing. There is a difference between a chargé and a confirmed ambassador. Foreign governments know that ambassadors carry the full weight of the President of the United States and the United States Senate. As a result, ambassadors often have greater access and influence which they can use to advance the interests of our country. Here's who loses out when we don't have a U.S. ambassador in place in a given country. American companies, investors, and entrepreneurs who want to do business there. American citizens who live in that country or experience an emergency while they're overseas. American students who study there. American tourists who visit. And the citizens of those countries who yearn for and benefit from deeper ties with the United States and with our people. Our department and the entire U.S. government lose out as well. Not having a confirmed ambassador in a given country makes us less effective at advancing every one of our policy priorities, from getting more countries to serve as temporary hubs for SIV processing, to bringing on more partners for global coalitions like the one we just announced to combat fentanyl, to support competitive bids for U.S. companies to build 5 and 6G networks and other critical infrastructure projects around the world. We also lose sight to the insights into countries that our ambassadors uniquely can develop through the unique relationships that they have at the highest levels of government, business, civil society. Now, here's who benefits from failing to fill these essential positions. America's adversaries. Only our adversaries, who are constantly looking to exploit any weakness or any opening to their advantage. The refusal of the Senate to approve these career public servants also undermines the credibility of our democracy. People abroad see it as a sign of dysfunction, ineffectiveness, inability to put national interests over political ones. These unnecessary delays also weaken the State Department as an institution, something I am charged with upholding and defending. They discourage highly qualified senior officers from pursuing ambassadorships because they don't want to put themselves or their families through this limbo, with their careers and their lives put on hold, as well as the lives of their spouses and their children. These delays also discourage rising officers who see the pinnacle of a career in the Foreign Service increasingly closed off to them. It's strange credulity that some of the members of Congress calling most loudly for outcompeting our rivals are at the same time tying our hands behind our back. We cannot and we must not let this become the new normal. These men and women yearn to serve, to do the jobs that they've been preparing for their entire careers. My message to the Senate today is this: let them serve. Put our best team out on the field. Stop harming our national security through unjustified delay and unprecedented obstruction. Let these nominees advance the interests of our nation, advance the interests of the American people. Thank you. Happy to take some questions.
Yeah. So just a couple of things on this, Mr. Secretary, and welcome back, by the way.
Good to see you.
Long round-the-world trip. Just on the Senate, who is being the most obstructionist here in terms of this? And then secondly on this, you know, you have more than 60 nominees, right? But the Pentagon has got 4 times as many who are also being held up. Now they're not ambassadorial appointments; some of them are just promotions. But why should if you're gonna complain, couldn't the Senate Democratic leadership devote floor time to getting through these holds? And then on something completely different, I'm just wondering, since the Black Sea Grain Initiative appeared to die today, I'm just wondering if you think that the Russians have any argument at all.
No.
Okay.
But I'm happy to come back to that. Look, first on the nominations. So Senator Paul has a blanket hold on our nominees, and there are additional holds that we're working through. But we have been working extensively with Senator Paul. We provided documents and other information that he's requested, but unfortunately he continues to block all of our nominees. And again, the vast majority are career officers. There are other holds out there. I can't speak to their specifics, but I can tell you we're working directly with the officers concerned to try to work through them. You're right. There are 62 nominees in the process right now. Of those, as I said, 38 are on the floor. Of those, 35 are career officers. Now, we managed to get 5 people through. And of the 5 people we got through, 4 we got through as a result of Senator Schumer moving them through the process and taking a huge amount of time of Senate business to get folks confirmed with votes. That is not the way it's been done in the past. It's not the way it should be done now going forward. It ties up too much of the Senate's time, and there is absolutely no justification for it. I'm grateful to Senator Schumer, Leader Schumer, for doing this, but that's not the way it should happen. And at the rate we're going, even if you decided to give floor time to every single one, there is not enough floor time to get through all of these nominees. And never mind doing the other business of the nation. And of course, we're in very close contact with our colleagues in DOD, working through this. And certainly, there's been a lot of focus on their nominees or promotion lists, and that too is absolutely detrimental to our national security.
Sorry, just one other thing. You mentioned that Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon won't have
by the end of the summer. That's right. It's the rotation.
But I wasn't aware that has the White House nominated a replacement for Ambassador Nines?
I'll come back to you with all of the folks that we've nominated or about to be nominated, depending on. So on the Black Sea Grain Initiative, look, first, it's really important to put this in perspective. Of course, never should have been necessary in the first place. The only reason it became necessary is because Russia invaded Ukraine and then decided to blockade the ports and prevent Ukraine from sending grain around the world, as it's done for years. It's been the breadbasket of the world. So as a result of that, Turkey, the United Nations, as you know, the Secretary General, negotiated this arrangement, the Black Sea Grain Initiative, to at least allow the grain and other food products to get out of Ukraine and onto world markets. And that's had a tremendously positive benefit. Something like 32 million tons of food products have gotten out. It's the equivalent of 18 billion loaves of bread in the roughly 1 year that the grain initiative has been in effect. And that's done two things. It's actually gotten food onto people's plates, but even when the food wasn't going directly to certain countries or certain people, it also was helping to keep prices low because it's a global market. So the result of Russia's action today, weaponizing food, using it as a tool, as a weapon in its war against Ukraine, will be to make food harder to come by in places that desperately need it and have prices rise. We're already seeing the market react to this as prices are going up. The bottom line is it's unconscionable. Should not happen. This should be restored as quickly as possible. And I hope that every country is watching this very closely. They will see that Russia is responsible for denying food to people who are desperately need it around the world and to contribute to rising prices at a time when many countries continue to experience very difficult inflation.
Well, thank you so much. Just following up on the Matt's Black Sea question, if I may, would it be possible for Turkey, the U.S., or some other partner countries to provide any other sort of guarantee, formal or informal, that would help get grain bulk carriers from the Ukrainian coast through the Bosphorus? And is there any broad effort underway to ensure freedom of navigation in the Black Sea, which is what the U.S. insists upon in many of the other seas around the world? And linked to that is the Kerch Bridge question. There was a bombing of the Kerch Bridge. I'm just wondering if Russia says naval drones were responsible. Were those from Ukraine, and does the U.S. support that?
So we'll back on the Black Sea grain issue first. Look, the Ukrainians and others will look at whether there are any other options. But the challenge is this: if Russia is ending this initiative and sending a message that grain cannot and other food products cannot leave Ukraine unimpeded, even if there are other options, I think it will likely have a profound chilling effect on the ability to pursue them as other countries, companies, shippers, etc., will be very concerned about what happens to their ships and to their personnel if Russia is opposing any export of food products from Ukraine. The whole point of this was to have a voluntary agreement that involved all of the relevant parties, that was endorsed by the United Nations, to make sure that there was safety, security, predictability in moving food out of Ukraine into places that were desperately in need of it. So in the absence of that, I think, yes, we'll look to see what else can be done to find other ways to get Ukrainian food products on the world market, including, again, moving, as Ukraine's already been doing, moving things out through rail and by road. But in terms of the volumes necessary, it's really hard to replace what's now being lost as a result of Russia weaponizing food. On the Kerch Bridge, this is a situation that we're monitoring, and I don't really have anything in particular to offer on that. Just I can say as a general proposition. Of course, Ukraine has to decide how it conducts this war in defense of its territory, its people, its freedom.
And finally, the back of the room, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question on China, because China's already raising concerns about a future stop by the Taiwanese vice president. I wonder if you're worried at all that that's going to undermine the progress that you feel you've made, putting a floor under that relationship. And real quickly on passports, because that's a common concern that you're hearing from members of Congress and Americans. What's it going to take to speed up the process?
Second part first. I was just, I guess about 3 weeks ago, visiting our passport office in New York, the largest passport office that we have, and saw the operation firsthand, and saw people working overtime, double time, triple time to get blue books into people's hands. The demand for passports is greater than it's ever been. As you know, we basically had to build back up from zero because when COVID hit, the bottom dropped out of the entire program to issue passports here in the United States or to issue visas to those seeking to visit the United States. And so we have been working very hard to build that back up, to bring people in, to train them, to make sure that we were dedicating the resources to it. We will issue more passports this year than in any previous year, but that's just a reflection of the fact that demand is higher than it's ever been. And we're throwing everything we can at this, trying to make sure that people have those blue books, that they're able to travel. And it's something that comes up repeatedly with members of Congress, with folks that I come across. So what I can tell you is, and we can get you the actual numbers, but there's unprecedented demand, there's an unprecedented effort, and we're trying to do our best in getting people their passports. On the potential transit of Vice President Lai, Taiwan, we expect that he will transit the United States on both the incoming and outgoing legs of a trip that he plans to take to Paraguay for the inauguration in Paraguay. This is very routine, given the distances traveled, to have a transit point, and it is fully consistent and common practice. If you go back, 10 vice presidents from Taiwan have transited over the past couple of decades. This will be the 11th, and actually the second for Vice President Lai. There is no reason for the PRC to use this transit as a pretext for provocative action. We are committed to preserving peace and stability on the Taiwan Strait. It's critical to regional and, for that matter, global security, as well as prosperity. And as I've been able to share repeatedly with now with our Chinese counterparts, including just last week when I met with Wang Yi, the senior foreign policy official, we have no desire to change the status quo on the Taiwan Straits. Our policy hasn't changed. We fully expect that neither side will unilaterally change the status quo. We fully expect that everyone involved will resolve any differences peacefully. And again, this transit is fully consistent with that policy.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. And now, the main act.
Thank you.
I don't know about the main act. I will do my best. Matt, you want to start? Anything further, or am I free to go?
Well, I'm just curious because, when the Secretary said by the end of the summer you won't have confirmed ambassadors in Egypt, Israel, Jordan, or Lebanon, but I don't think, unless I'm wrong, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there has been anyone even nominated to replace Tom Nice.
The point he was making is that we had no.
I mean, you can't complain.
If we had a nominee today, that nominee would still face the same blanket hold after that nominee went through the Senate, the regular process, still same the blanket hold.
Has the White House nominated anyone?
We have not yet nominated, but if you look at the number of let me finish. If you look at the situation as it exists currently, all the nominees that start today are still backlogged based on what's happening in the floor. There is a huge backlog.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not debating that point. I'm just wondering if have there been people nominated for those four posts?
We have. I don't have the full.
I think at least one of them has been.
Yeah,
But certainly no one for Israel.
that's right. Well, the ambassador for Israel just stepped down in the last 2 weeks. So.
Well, yeah, but you're complaining
the
about
point-
something that's going to happen later this summer, but you don't even have anyone in the
I would
pipeline.
be more than happy to withdraw the complaint if the Senate decides to start moving on our ambassadors expeditiously, and we can count on the ambassador to nominee to Israel to be moved through unanimous consent, as these typically have been.
We're going to make some news about who would be nominated.
I don't think I should do that.
Ambassador Knight, did he already? I'm sorry, but just to clarify, Ambassador Knight, did he already leave his post?
I believe he's finished his tenure. Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up because we received a statement from Senator Rand Paul in response to Blinken's letter and comments, and he's placing the blame with Chairman Menendez, saying the committee will only return to expedited procedure when Chairman Menendez signs COVID-19 document requests. Is that something that the State Department would encourage Menendez to do? Is that something that Blinken or officials have spoken to senators Can you just speak to that?
So I won't get into what is an internal Senate issue. I will say from our perspective, we have already provided documents to Senator Paul that are responsive to his requests. We have made clear that we see this as an ongoing process. We will continue to provide documents that are responsive to his requests. But he is asking us for documents that are not State Department documents and documents that we cannot provide because they're not in our possession, but yet continues to use that as an excuse to hold up State Department nominees, as the Secretary pointed out, who have never been held to this standard before. The vast majority of career ambassadors have been confirmed through unanimous consent. So we are happy to continue to engage in a legitimate process with Senator Paul. I will let Senator Menendez speak to internal Senate issues, but he shouldn't be holding our nominees hostage because all that does is hurt our national security. Go ahead, Janie.
Thank you, Matt. The UN Security Council failed to announce last week a statement condemning the North Korea's ballistic missile launch violations due to opposition from China and Russia. As long as China and Russia protect North Korea in the UN Security Council, North Korea will not stop its provocations. What solution does the United States have to convince China and Russia?
Well, I will just say, as you pointed out, you're right. All of the members of the UN Security Council, except Russia and China, voted to condemn the DPRK's continued violation of UN Security Council resolutions, expressing concern about continued launches and calling for progress for dialogue. We hope the UN Security Council will continue to come together to address the DPRK's actions. And I will say that this is an issue that the Secretary raised in his meetings when we were in China. It's an issue we continue to raise with China, and we would hope that China and Russia would urge the DPRK to come to the table.
Second question, South Korean President Yoon made a surprise visit to Ukraine and met with President Zelensky, and President Yoon promised to help Ukraine with military supplies and reconstructions. How can the U.S. evaluate this?
We welcome the visit, and we welcomed the President's expression of support. We always think it's important when other foreign leaders can make the trip to Ukraine to speak firsthand with President Zelensky and other members of the Ukrainian government to see the destruction that has been inflicted on that country by Russia. And we encourage every country in the world to join us in supporting Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. My first question is about Pakistan. Just had its Corps Commanders Conference held today, in which they urged Afghanistan to take care of the terrorist sanctuaries there, which are coming and doing activities in Pakistan. And this is, in 1 week, this is the second time the Pakistan military has openly told Afghanistan to take some action. Otherwise, they are going to take some action against them. Your comments about that?
So I don't have any comments specifically on that, but I will say we have made very clear that we believe the Taliban has the responsibility to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a safe haven for launching terrorist attacks.
Okay, and my second question is about President Modi and the UAE president had a meeting a few days ago, and they decided to do their trade of over $8 billion and change it into their local currencies. We are seeing a big twist in the dollarization value decrease over there. Is the U.S. paying any attention to that or doing any steps about that?
We are, but I don't have any comment on it. Saeed.
Thank you. A couple of questions on the Palestinian-Israeli issue. Peace Now reports that since the beginning of January, the Israelis have approved something like 13,000 new housing settlement units and so on. I mean, it sounds like a broken record, but what could this administration do to sort of deter the Israelis instead of rewarding them? I mean, we see that the president of Israel is coming, maybe the prime minister of Israel is coming, so.
I will say, as I've said before, that we have been absolutely clear on this issue. The United States opposes such unilateral actions that make a two-state solution more difficult to achieve and are an obstacle to peace. That includes settlement activity. we have made this clear publicly, made it clear in conversation with you a number of times, and we make it clear in our conversations with Israeli government officials.
Another question on a journalist, a Palestinian journalist that has been arrested by the Palestinian Authority for conducting his job. I know that the PA is, you're the benefactor of the PA in many ways. So do you have any comment on the brutality of the Palestinian Authority in terms of dealing with Palestinian journalists?
I don't have any comment on this specific case. I would say that broadly speaking, the United States supports press freedom and the protection of all journalists in carrying out their work.
Are you aware of the arrest of Aqil Awaude?
I've seen the reports. Yeah.
Since the president's visiting tomorrow, it's been announced today that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been invited to come to the U.S. to meet with President Biden. You've expressed these concerns over and over. Often in response to Saeed questions, but in response to many different actions that the Israeli government has taken. You're expressing concerns about the policies of this government, but we now see an invitation being extended. We've got the president coming. I guess what's your response to the I think a lot of people would see that and say you're not following up these concerns with any sort of tangible actions.
I would say I think that the characterization oversimplifies our relationship with this government, as is true for a number of our allies. There are things with which we agree with Israel and things with which we disagree. We make clear in all of our engagements with Israel that our commitment to their security is ironclad. At the same time, we raise concerns that we have with them. We also have priorities that we're working on with respect to the government of Israel. As you know, Secretary Blinken traveled to Saudi Arabia recently, where he pressed for normalization with Saudi Arabia. We've launched an extensive effort to deepen and broaden normalization with other countries in the region. So yes, we do have concerns with certain actions the government of Israel takes, but we have other issues in which we have shared priorities and we work together. So our relationship with them is one where we have some things we agree on and work together, and other places where we have concerns and we press them privately and publicly.
One of those issues that you are in touch with them on is that Israelis getting access to the visa waiver program. There's been some reporting out of Israel. Israeli officials seem to be sort of suggesting that they're going to be able to move forward on that there might be a pilot program to see whether Palestinian Americans can travel in the same way as other Americans in Israel. Is there any update you can give us on Israel's chances of getting into that program soon?
I am not going to comment on those reports or prognosticate on their chances, other than to say that we continue to be in discussions with Israel about this matter. We continue to work with them toward fulfilling the visa waiver program requirements, including extending reciprocal privileges to all U.S. citizens and nationals, including Palestinian Americans, to travel to and through Israel. It's an important issue. It's one we've been engaged with them on for some time, but I don't have an update on the status. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Last week, Iraq has signed a deal with Tehran that exchanged gas for oil, and this has likely violated your sanctions on Iran. Any reactions to that?
I don't. We continue to monitor that issue.
Okay, and one last question. This week, the Iraqi Prime Minister visited Syria and met with Bashar Assad, and also they discussed about different issues in the region. As the Syrian Bashar Assad coming back to the regional arena, do you have a clear policy towards the Kurdish issue in Syria? How do you want to resolve the Kurdish issue in Syria at this stage?
Let me take that one back. Go ahead.
Thank you. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan signaled that we might have to wait till October to see the Turkish parliament ratifying Sweden's accession to NATO. Based on your recent conversations that you have with the Turkish government, are you optimistic that this might move forward faster and get it done earlier, before October?
I won't speak to timelines. I will say that we are optimistic that Sweden's accession into NATO will be approved. We appreciate Prime Minister Erdogan's work on this matter. President, excuse me. I knew as it came out of my mouth that it was wrong. We appreciate President Erdogan's work on this matter, but I don't have any timeline other than to say that we hope it's approved as soon as possible. Go ahead, Gita.
Thanks. Do you have any update updates on the work of the Office of the Special Envoy for Iran in gaining the release of the dual national Americans imprisoned in Iran?
I do not. It's an issue on which that office continues to be engaged. We are working to return. We're working to secure the return of those American citizens, but I don't have any update.
Has the needle moved at all since last?
I just don't have any update, other than to say it continues to be an important priority for us.
Okay. Again, in Iran now, the police or the government has started a new crackdown for hijab since the anniversary of Mahsa Amini's death is approaching. Any comments on that?
I will say that we are concerned by the reports that Iran's so-called morality police are cracking down to enforce mandatory hijab. It seems the regime has learned nothing from the recent protests, and we believe that women and girls everywhere should be allowed to wear what they want. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti has stated that Kosovo police is the extension of the KLA, which, was the militia during the war in the 90s. So if the Kosovo police, President of Serbia told me in the interview for the Republic today, I'm quoting, he said, if the Kosovo police is the successor of the KLA, then the legal fact is the KLA and all the groups that emerged from it are prohibited by the UN Resolution 1244. He said that he's going to talk about this with the NATO Secretary General this week in Brussels. My question, do you support Albin Kurti's rhetoric that Kosovo police is the extension of the KLA?
Let me take that one back and get you an answer.
Okay, can I ask another?
Go ahead. Go follow.
Okay.
I'll come to you next. Go ahead.
So the other thing related to the situation in the north of Kosovo. So President of Serbia said that since the beginning of this year, I'm quoting him, 7 Serbs have been wounded in attacks by the Albanians. And he said these often involved official Albanian figures like police officers or members of Kosovo security forces. And he said no legal proceedings are being conducted against those responsible for targeting Serbian population in the north. So, and he said that NATO must put an end to all these provocations. So are you, as the United States, are going to address the arrest of Serbian population in the north of Kosovo?
I will say, I will reiterate what we said before, which is that we urge both sides to take steps to de-escalate and return to the EU-facilitated dialogue. Go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. 2 quick questions regarding China. What is President Biden's response to holding China accountable for their organ harvesting, forced sterilization, labor, and abortion of Muslim Uyghurs in Chinese internment camps, as well as Christian persecution, not only in China, but internationally? And then follow up on.
I will say we have been very clear that we oppose the treatment of Uyghurs in China and have taken steps already, a number of steps to hold China accountable for those actions.
Okay, about Christian persecution? You have a
and
comment?
the same. Go ahead.
Okay, and then what is President Biden's response to U.S. national security concerns with Chinese companies owning American farmland and businesses?
Let me take that one back. Yeah, go ahead.
Has China provided any explanation for Foreign Minister Qin Gong's absence?
They've said that he is dealing with health issues. Secretary Blinken met at the end of last week with Wang Yi, another one of his counterparts, and expressed his best wishes to see him soon.
And then on a different topic, did the precedent set by the department in the Afghan dissent cable, giving that to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, set or like change the way or allow Senator Rand Paul to make demands that he's making?
I certainly don't believe so. We saw that as an extraordinary accommodation that we made to the Congress in a very special circumstance. As you know, we allowed members of Congress to come here and read that cable behind closed doors. We see that as a very different issue than the demands that Senator Paul is making. And again, I would just reiterate, Senator Paul can make legitimate requests of the State Department, of others in the administration. What we object to is him holding hostage nominees who are career Foreign Service officers who have served in Republican and Democratic administrations alike. Many of them have been nominated to and confirmed for ambassadorships under Republican presidents, including the previous administration. holding those nominees up for issues that have nothing to do with their qualifications and hurting our national security process, our national security in the process, that's what we object to. Shannon.
About the Ukrainian counteroffensive, a defense official said today that since the latest counteroffensive began, they've been able to retake about 81 square miles of territory. That's a little larger than the size of D.C. Now compare that to the 4,600 square miles that Ukraine was able to take during the first counteroffensive. Does the U.S. and its allies see that as a significant step forward for Ukraine, or does the strategy here need to be revised?
I will say, as I've said consistently since the beginning of this counteroffensive, that from this podium, I'm not going to pass judgment on the progress or provide kind of minute-by-minute updates on what is ultimately a military matter that doesn't even involve our own military. I will say from our perspective, obviously the Russians have had time to dig in, to fortify, to put landmines all over the Ukrainian countryside. And so I know that the Ukrainians expected that this would be a difficult process. We expected that it would be a difficult process. I think the important thing is that the Ukrainians have everything they need to conduct this counteroffensive. They have yet to commit all of the military units that they have available to them, including some units that were trained by NATO forces over the past year. So I would say it is still early days in the counteroffensive, but as to any battlefield assessments, I will leave that to the Ukrainians. Yeah, go ahead.
So a couple of hours ago, House Foreign Affairs Chairman Michael McCall said he hopes that U.S. could put some leverage on countries like Turkey that are depending on F-16s to use their leverage on Putin for the grain deal. Is there any link between F-16 sales to Turkey and the grain deal? And are you in touch with Congress or Ankara today about Russia's decision about the grain deal?
There is no link, and I will say that Turkey has been at the forefront of encouraging Russia to first enter into and then extend the Black Sea Grain Initiative. So Turkey has been a leader in this effort of trying to secure food supplies for the entire world. We have commended them for their efforts, and it is Russia that is holding up this initiative, not Turkey or any other country. Go ahead.
Thank you. Very quick question on two questions on Bangladesh. After returning back Under Secretary Zaya, Bangladesh regime is back to, under attack the opposition parties, rallies, and yesterday there was a by-election, though main opposition boycotted because of that. The even independent candidate under attack came under attack. He's in hospital now, so and less than 10% vote casted. And so, how could you believe that Prime Minister Hasina will ensure free, fair election, as 2014 and 2018 election was not free, fair, and still the by-election is not free and fair, and candidates like under attack. So what is your position on that? Are you following this?
I would say that this type of political violence has no place in democratic elections. We encourage the government of Bangladesh to investigate any reports of violence thoroughly, transparently, and impartially, and to hold the perpetrators of violence to account. And I would say that, as we have said before, that we would expect the government of Bangladesh to hold free and fair elections, and we continue to monitor it closely.
Just Wednesday night in New York, one of the opposition activists protest in front of the ruling visiting Awami League party MP, and just after a few hours, his family got under attack back home in Bangladesh. His brother and his mother and the family members, and the government ruling party posted in live Facebook that they are attacking who is raising boys outside the country. They are attacking their home. So it was under live. So if someone is talking from U.S. or protesting or arguing with the government party, and they are not safe in their home country. So what is your views on that?
I would just say again that type of violence that you mentioned has no place in democratic elections. Let me go.
I wondered if you could say anything about the meeting the Secretary had today with the CEOs of Intel, Qualcomm, and NVIDIA, and how much this department sort of looks to the private sector to, in terms of feedback on policy towards China, particularly restrictions on semiconductors.
Yeah, I would say the Secretary looked at that meeting as an opportunity to do two things. Number one, to share his perspective on the industry and on supply chain issues, especially after his recent visit to China. And number two, to hear directly from those companies about how they see supply chain issues, about how they see doing business in China. We've seen China recently announce restrictions on the export of materials that are used to construct chips, and so he saw it as a productive meeting to exchange views on those two issues.
And just moving on to a slightly different issue, Thailand, last week the parliament was unable to, or didn't approve Pita, the head of the Move Forward party, to become the prime minister. I wondered, I know the US has kind of spoken a little bit to the current sort of post-election environment in Thailand, but are you concerned that the party, Move Forward, is the party that won the most seats in the elections in May, that a government, could end up being formed without them being represented?
Let me say a few things. First, that the United States doesn't have a preferred outcome in the Thai election. We don't support any particular party or politician. What we do support is multi-party democracy and a post-election process that reflects the will of the Thai people and supports a democratic and prosperous future for Thailand. We are very closely watching the post-election developments. That includes the recent developments in the legal system, which are of concern. We believe this moment is an opportunity for Thailand to demonstrate its commitment to democracy.
And, you mentioned the developments in the legal system that are of concern. I wonder if you could say a little bit more clearly if Mr. Pita is disqualified from taking office, or if the party is dissolved. Does that represent a red line for the U.S.?
I don't want to speculate about how we might react to events that have not yet occurred. I will say that we are watching it closely, and the recent developments are of concern to us. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and close this out?
The U.S. has attended a meeting in Qatar on Lebanon today, and the meeting included Saudi Arabia, Egypt, France, and Qatar. Do you have any readout for the meeting?
We have a statement that either gone out while I was at the podium or will be going out shortly on this meeting. What I will say is that the 5 countries underscored our commitment to Lebanon's sovereignty and independence. We noted with concern, however, that nearly 9 months after the end of the president's term, Lebanon's political leaders have yet to elect a successor. We also underscored the desperate need for judicial reform and implementation of the rule of law, especially in regard to the 2020 Port of Beirut explosion investigation. And we'll have more details in the statement that comes out soon.
Does the U.S. support the elections of the Lebanese Armed Forces commander as a president?
We do not take positions on elections. Thank you. Thank you.